feedback. We all say we want it, and as managers, we all know we need to give it. And yet, most of us actually hate receiving it and are pretty crummy at giving it.
I find myself wondering if we can even trust you with the privilege of being on air for the moment.
Are you done?
I'm sorry?
What is going on here? I think a big part of the problem is that people don't know how to give feedback in an effective way. They don't really know what it is, and they get stuck. And so today, I'm going to share with you how to give constructive, useful feedback in a way that is honest, helpful, and most likely to actually be received in a way that will have an impact. So before we go on, I'd like some feedback from you. In the comments, share with me your stories of either giving feedback or receiving feedback that went well or frankly pretty darn crummy. I'm Bob Bordone. I'm a senior fellow at Harvard Law School. I'm the founder and former director of Harvard Law School's Negotiation and Mediation Clinical Program, and I'm the founder and principal of the Cambridge Negotiation Institute. So, tips for giving feedback. Let's go. First is be recipient-centered. So what do I mean by that? Well, before you start giving feedback, a really important question to ask is what kind of feedback would be most helpful? That sounds obvious, and very frequently I see people launch into feedback without any idea of what would be useful. What does this person want feedback on? Second point about being recipient-centered is ask them, how do they like to receive feedback? People actually have very different preferences with respect to that, both around the how and the timing. So I'll give you an example. When I taught my negotiation class at Harvard Law School, I would often give a lecture to a big group of almost 200 people. Immediately after that, I'd be working with a smaller group of just 24 students. Now, I love feedback, and I particularly love feedback on my lectures, because that's how I get better. But here's the thing. If you are giving me feedback from the walk to the big lecture room to the tiny room where I now have to work with 24 students, it is not going to land. The timing is really, really bad for me. I would love to have that feedback later on. Other people have a really different view, right? For them, getting the feedback right away is when it's fresh in their mind, they can encode it, they know exactly what you're talking about. Let me give you another example. I have worked with some people who say to me, I really, really want to hear your feedback about what I could do differently and how I can improve. And frankly, I also need to know what I did well. And in fact, in order to be able to hear how I could improve, I need to know what I did well. Other people are like, just get to the point. Or I don't want that sandwich stuff. The one worked well, the one do differently, and then another worked well to make me feel good. The point is, each of us receive feedback differently, and if you want to be good at giving it, you need to know what does your recipient actually need here. The second tip here is that actually there are quite different kinds of feedback, and they exist for different purposes. So broadly, I want to offer you 3 different kinds of feedback. The first is what I would call appreciation. So appreciation is really acknowledging and honoring the effort that someone put into something. For example, I can say with absolute sincerity that I appreciate that you are all watching this video right now. It warms my heart. Most of us really like appreciation, and we really need appreciation, and it's worth giving appreciation. A second kind of feedback is what we call evaluation. So evaluation is really measuring someone against some objective standard, or maybe against some set of other colleagues. So for example, right, as a professor, whether I like it or not, I'm often asked to evaluate, and evaluation comes in the form of a grade. You get an A, you get an A minus, you get a B plus. Now, frankly, feedback that is evaluation can be very helpful in all sorts of domains. Truth of the matter is it typically doesn't help us get better. Think about at work when you get something like meets standards. or meets expectations, or exceeds expectations? Or is it the very top 2%? When you get the feedback, it's in the top 2%. Here's what I think it does. It makes you feel good. Do you have any actual idea of what it is that puts you in the top 2%? Probably not. You could make a guess, but you don't know what it is. The last kind of feedback is called coaching. So coaching is actually feedback that is specific and directed toward future orientation. So let me break this down. When I'm giving coaching, I want to share some very specific worked wells. Here are 2 things you should repeat. It was really good you washed the salad, and it was really good you served it chilled. And here are some specific things you should do differently. Add spice, more chicken, less mayonnaise. I want to really make an important distinction here. It is not did wrong. Did wrong is what I didn't do right. Do differently is what I could do. The other thing I want to say about this is I want the coaching to be very specific. If I just said something like, make the salad more tasty, I don't know what that means. What is more tasty? Should I put cinnamon on it? Maybe I should put like a pound of sugar on top? Should I boil it? No, you need to actually give the very specific, do differently, and worked well. The last piece on coaching here is that you make it a conversation. Meaning, I want to ask the person I'm giving the feedback to, what's your reaction to that? What are your thoughts? It's not this case that just because you're the giver of the feedback, that you're the world's arbiter of all that is true in the universe. Making it a conversation involving the person to whom you're giving the feedback honors them, respects them, and frankly, helps you be more specific and useful in the feedback you're giving. So part of the reason why you want to make it a conversation really loops back to that recipient-centered piece. For example, if I say something like, add more salt, what's your reaction to that? The person might say, I could totally appreciate why you're doing that. Actually, what I should have mentioned is I was trying a low sodium recipe because I need to reduce my sodium intake. Oh, well, that changes my whole view of it, right? Sometimes I've seen feedback delivered as, you should do a better job listening. And the person says, oh, well, okay. But they're thinking to themselves, actually, I was trying to be more assertive. Or actually, I was trying to do something else. It's kind of the more you make feedback a conversation, the more you'll get valuable information that helps you hone your feedback in a way that's most useful to the person you're giving it to.